Chapter 1 The First Step. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Boom. Out in the cosmos, a meteor blazed, shooting from the chaotic void toward a place buzzing with life. This caught some beings' attention pretty quick. Almost immediately, a massive gaze descended, carrying waves of music, one after another. The meteor was snagged and absorbed. A completely new note was born, hovering near the grand music, reflecting the melody, fresh and harmonious. Nice. The gaze withdrew. Then, achievement, step into Zhongzhou. Instructions, enter Zhongzhou. Ha. The wind, the rustling grass, the leaves rubbing together, birds chirping, and the warmth on his face. Levi opened his eyes, and the sunlight stabbed him awake, making him squint. After a minute, his eyes adjusted, and he looked around. The first thing he saw was a line of text hanging in the air. Achievement. Why did this scene look so familiar? Zhongzhou. Levi stood up and took a deep breath. The air was so clean, with a hint of grass and earth, way better than his crummy apartment. He was standing under a huge oak tree. All around were green fields. Levi was dead certain there was no place like this anywhere near his home. Had he been kidnapped, or did he sleepwalk all the way overseas? Levi was totally disoriented. He tried to remember what happened before, but his mind was a blank. The last thing he remembered was playing Minecraft at home. Minecraft, the classic sandbox game, for everyone. You could say that game had been with Levi for half his life. From the first time he played it to now, he'd been at it for 10 years, even though he was staring at pixelated blocks all day, he never got tired of it. Wait a minute. Levi was jolted awake and looked at the line of text. It was starting to fade, turning transparent, but when he focused on it, it popped back into view. Is this the achievement system from MC? Stunned by the thought, Levi suddenly noticed a see-through notification in the top right corner of his vision. Beginner's Tutorial, Open Backpack. Backpack? Levi thought the word, and a familiar interface appeared. 3 rows of backpack slots, 1 row of quick inventory. There was a kind of sluggish-looking full-body image of Levi up in the corner, and 4 armor bars next to it. After closing the backpack, Levi saw another row of health and hunger meters in his vision. Probably because he'd been out for so long, the hunger bar was already half empty. Am I in the game? Just as Levi was thinking about whether he should try to build a crafting table first, someone called out to him. Hey, you okay there? Language module loaded. The notification box popped up again. Levi jumped and looked around, but he didn't see anyone. What the heck? I'm down here, sir. A hand waved in front of his eyes. Levi looked down and met the eyes of a dwarf. Sir, are you alright? Levi didn't answer right away, just stared at the person in front of him, confused. First of all, he only came up to Levi's waist, judging by his voice, mature face, clothes, and the fish on his belt. This guy wasn't a kid, which meant only one thing, dwarfism. Levi straightened his face and nodded. Hello. Human fella, are you lost or something? I mean, in trouble, maybe, human fella. That was a new one. Even if it was weird, the sight of this little dude made Levi feel a little better. At least he wasn't in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I am lost, actually. Could you tell me where this is? The little guy blinked and said, oh, this is the Shire, or Hobbiton, to be exact. Hold on, what the hell was the Shire? A memory flashed in his head. The Shire, Lord of the Rings. Levi stood there, stunned. He quickly looked down at the guy in front of him, kid-sized, big feet, hairy feet, slightly pointy ears, halfling, or hobbit. So this was Middle-earth. Levi was frozen again, not knowing if he should be stoked or freaked out. Middle-earth. When he watched Lord of the Rings, he dreamed of living in that beautiful place, with its amazing scenery and interesting people. But that was just a fantasy. Levi knew himself. He knew that with his skills, even if he went to Middle-earth, he'd just be a regular Joe. And let's be honest, life for average folks in Middle-earth wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. You could get offed by orcs or some evil dude out of nowhere. This place was no joke. Seeing Levi space out again, the hobbit scratched his head. This guy was a few sandwiches short of a picnic. Was something wrong with his head? Black hair, strange clothes, soft face, not like any humans he'd seen before. He must have come from way out of town. The hobbit looked at Levi with curiosity, thought for a second, and said, "Sir, if you need a place to stay, you could try the tavern in town. And breeze east of here, there are lots of humans there, you might like it better." "Oh, thanks, I see." Gurgle, Levi's stomach growled, the air suddenly got awkward, the tall guy and the short guy looked at each other, the hobbit looked at Levi, then down at his stomach. I'm making fried fish and potatoes tonight, want to come over and eat?" Levi wanted to say no thanks to be polite, but his hunger was too obvious. If his hunger bar dropped to 0, he'd lose health points. He blurted out, "Sure, that'd be great." The hobbit blinked, clearly not expecting Levi to say yes. Looking at his face, he seemed to regret being so polite. "Well, come on then, but I only bought enough ingredients for me, so I'll have to hit the market again." "Mind coming along?" The hobbit chatted as he led the way. Levi tagged along, passing a bunch of hobbit holes. After crossing a little bridge, they came to a bustling market, packed with hobbits. Levi followed the hobbit like a lost puppy. He was so tall compared to everyone, he had to watch his head and pay attention to where he was going. Humans were rare in the Shire, and in the busy market, curious eyes kept looking at Levi. "Are you a wizard?" Finally, a little hobbit kid ran up and asked with wide, blinking eyes. "Wizard? You mean Gandalf?" "Nope, not me." Levi waved his hand, but before he could say anything else, his parents pulled him away. Just then, the hobbit who'd invited him for dinner bought the groceries, called to Levi, and headed out of the market. Finally clear of the noise, Levi felt relieved. They stopped in front of a hobbit hole. "This is my place." The hobbit opened the door and went in, remembering to turn around and say, "The ceiling might be a little low for you, but come on in and sit down. It's a bit early for dinner, but it'll be afternoon tea time soon, we can grab something to eat first." Levi ducked to get through the door, closed it gently, and looked around the little house, his eyes wide with curiosity. Why does this place feel so familiar? Levi's attention was drawn to a small wooden box by the door. He suddenly said, "Excuse me, I'm Levi, I haven't caught your name yet." The hobbit had just put the groceries in the kitchen. Hearing Levi introduce himself, he turned around and said, "Oh, hello, Levi. I'm Baggins. Bilbo Baggins." Chapter 2 Synthetic Table-Level Cooking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Baggins? Bilbo Baggins? Levi was floored. What were the odds? After cracking the case, he just mentioned the wooden box looked familiar. Wasn't that his mother's dowry chest? Whoa! Levi stared at Bilbo. The poor hobbit had no clue what was about to hit his family. He had no idea some dwarf would be pawning his mother's trousseau box down the line. Levi suddenly felt uneasy. He stood at the door again and announced, "Levi, here to see you." This was his official greeting. Bilbo seemed caught off guard, quickly smoothed his clothes and replied, "Bilbo Baggins, at your service." With that, Levi stepped back into the cozy hobbit hole. Hobbits were definitely pack rats. Levi could immediately spot a ton of food and drink stashed deep inside, enough for a feast for 13 dwarves. Impressive. "Levi, grab a seat. Afternoon tea is at 4. It's not quite time, but I don't mind starting early. What do you fancy? How about fried sausages with bread?" Hobbit hospitality wasn't free. Even though Levi's visit was unexpected, Bilbo still treated him like an old friend. "Sounds great. I'm your guest, so I'm happy to go with whatever you like." Levi agreed. "As the guest wishes, host, okay." Bilbo scratched his head and hauled out a bunch of sausages and a stack of bread from the pantry. Then, with Levi watching, he sliced the sausages and prepped the frying pan. While the fire was heating up the pan, Bilbo stepped away to grab something else. Levi's curiosity got the better of him. He moved closer to check out the small stove. It was a basic stovetop frying pan, a bit short, just the right height for a hobbit. "Interested in cooking?" Bilbo's voice came from behind. Levi stepped aside, letting Bilbo take over. "This pan's been in the family forever. It's a good one." Sizzle. The sausage hit the pan, splattering a little oil. Silence for a few seconds. Sensing the awkwardness, Bilbo glanced at the sausages frying, put his hands on his hips, and added. I'm pretty confident about my cooking. Frying, roasting, boiling. Learned it all from my mom. He flipped the sausages, the other side was browning, releasing a tempting meaty smell. Levi's stomach rumbled, gulped, Levi swallowed. Finally, Bilbo put the fried sausage on a plate and sprinkled a little pepper on top. Just as Levi was about to ask if he could try one, a notification popped up in front of him. Function unlocked, synthesis table, learned, recipe, branch recipe, fried sausage, You can check what you can make anytime. The synthesis table updates based on the items you interact with. Synthesis table. Clink, a plate of sausages landed in front of Levi, snapping him out of it. Guess you were starving. Bilbo was really thoughtful. Thanks. Levi mumbled, touched, then, the plate was wiped clean in seconds. Bilbo didn't even make it back to the stove, hunger restored by 2 bars, out of 10. Bilbo, Levi asked suddenly, can I give it a shot? The cooking, I mean. Bilbo was surprised, not expecting that request. Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. Bilbo stepped back, Levi bent over, ready at the stove. Just as he grabbed the pan handle, a tutorial box appeared. Cooking steps, select recipe, prepare ingredients, lock tools, start cooking. Cooking's usually a skill, right? Lots of steps, controlling heat, salt. But for Levi, it's just a complicated furnace. Just follow the steps, sizzle, sausage into the pan. Levi stood stock still, transfixed. He looked like he was in a trance. The sausage was turning brown, and Bilbo, who had been watching closely, was about to warn him when Levi's arm twitched, tipping the pan, and the sausage flipped perfectly. Pro. Bilbo was impressed. Was this guy a chef? Better watch. Whoa, a minute later, he flipped it again, and a golden brown sausage, glistening and hot, landed on the plate. But he wasn't done. At the end, Levi sprinkled finely crushed salt evenly over the top. The fine salt melted in the heat, the 2 flavors became one. Just looking at the sausage made Bilbo swallow. Cooking complete. Sorry for the wait. Levi presented the plate to Bilbo. Bilbo cut into the sausage, and a puff of steam escaped, perfectly cooked. He took a bite, whoosh, meat, seasoning, and a touch of melted salt exploded in his mouth. The sausage was hot, almost scalding, but this tough hobbit couldn't open his mouth to release the aroma and heat. The texture and taste were almost inhumanly perfect. The little bit of salt elevated the flavor. Perfect. The hobbit's eyes widened. He stood up and pushed his chair back. Bilbo, at attention. Mr. Levi, I swear, this is the most delicious fried sausage I have ever eaten in my life. Thanks. Levi nodded, not sure why Bilbo was so excited. Wasn't this system-made food, like, pre-made? But, you know, technology isn't always a bad thing. No, Mr. Levi, I'm not exaggerating. I'm serious. I've eaten this sausage for years, but this is the first time I've tasted it. It turns out it can be this good. Oh, Levi raised an eyebrow, sensing something special. Really? Let me try. Sizzle. More sausages went into the pan and onto a plate. Levi took a bite. Levi took another bite. Levi put down his knife and fork, smiled, and nodded at Bilbo, but his mouth was twitching. This is freaking amazing. I can make this. Chapter 3 To Get Rich, First Pull Up Trees. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. That afternoon, Bilbo dashed to the warehouse and hauled out a variety of sausages, insisting that as a true Shire native, he had to treat Levi, a friend from afar, with proper hospitality. Levi wasn't about to refuse. They enjoyed a lavish afternoon tea together. While enjoying the food he had prepared, Levi was preoccupied. He'd read The Lord of the Rings countless times and knew the story inside and out. But actually being in this world was different. Aside from the key plot points and general storyline, which were like prophecies, he was clueless about the specifics of any place not described in detail. He needed time to adjust and gather information. After their meal, Bilbo declined his special Shire tobacco, and they sat in the small yard, lost in thought. A silence fell over them. Levi, anything pressing you need to do in the next few days? Bilbo asked suddenly. Levi glanced at him, raising his eyebrows. Bilbo stood up, taking a breath. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to pry. I just thought, if you're free, maybe you could stay here a little longer. The Shire's not so bad, is it? You could relax, look around. Hobbits aren't keen on leaving home or seeking adventure, but I'm personally curious about the world beyond the Shire. If you're willing, you could tell me about it, and I'd be a great host. Bilbo put his hands on his hips, blinking, waiting for Levi's answer. In his mind, Levi was now a world-class chef, maybe even a royal cook from some human kingdom. A meal crafted with such skill was worth every bite. Silence returned. Levi saw right through his intentions. Someone with talent never has to worry about where they go. Bilbo was starting to get anxious, and as he opened his mouth to speak again, Levi laughed. Huh, if you insist, I suppose I could shamelessly impose on you for a few more days. Thank you for your generosity, Mr. Bilbo. Oh, good, good. Bilbo nodded eagerly. Levi didn't breathe easy until he got up and went back inside. It was the first time Bilbo had invited a stranger to stay, so he was understandably nervous. Leisure time flies, and the time between afternoon tea and dinner vanished in a blink. Under the guise of learning, Levi picked up several recipes in one night. The result was that Bilbo ate all of Levi's cooking. While Levi was stuck with Bilbo's, the hobbit felt a little guilty, feasting on gourmet food while Levi suffered through his crude attempts at cooking. For a chef like that, eating such badly prepared food must be torture. Bilbo thought, if he had to eat burned fish cooked by a beginner, he wouldn't be able to stand it. At the table, both men wore satisfied expressions. Hobbits really do have enormous appetites. Levi figured that normally. That amount of food would last him all day. Levi had wondered if he would still get hungry, since in my world, you can't eat once your hunger bar is full, but he was surprised to find he could keep eating even after the bar was maxed out. The extra food filled a second, brighter hunger bar on top of the original, hunger storage. Levi realized that plenty of mods could do that. Middle-earth must be a mod, which makes sense. After some testing, Levi found he could only store an additional bar. After the second hunger bar filled, eating more had no effect. At that point, he felt full like normal. After the meal, Levi said goodnight to Bilbo and slipped away quietly, heading for a distant forest. Levi had been wanting to do this all day. He looked around to make sure nobody was around, then he raised his hand and punched the tree in front of him. Thud, a dull sound echoed. A small crack appeared in the trunk. Levi's hand was fine. Thud, thud, thud. The thudding continued, and after a few more punches that left the tree traumatized, a chunk of wood finally gave way. The whole tree crashed to the ground, startling a flock of birds. A miniature piece of wood fell to the ground and floated into his backpack. The name popped up, Oak Log. Unlike the game, the piece of wood looked exactly like it did when it broke off the tree. Levi tried to break off another piece, but found that this log took up a space in the backpack and couldn't be stacked, because the two pieces of wood were different. The solution. Unlocked synthesis formula, standard oak. In a few moments, the fallen tree vanished, replaced by stacked standard oaks in his backpack, as well as a pile of sticks and leaves. Achievement, standardization. I get it. Looking at the achievement pop-up, Levi had an epiphany. Just like no two snowflakes are alike, raw materials can't be stacked in the backpack because of their unique shapes, sizes, and structures, but after synthesis, they become uniform raw materials, so they can be stacked and stored. Levi could standardize the wood by putting it in the 4-grid synthesis column and processing it into familiar logs. With that in mind, Levi got to work, knocking down trees and gathering materials. As the materials in the backpack increased, more synthesis formulas unlocked, first the workbench, then the wooden pickaxe. Levi knocked on the ground under his feet and began mining, digging straight down. After a while, Levi emerged from the ground. His backpack now held a set of stone tools, earning him the Stone Age achievement. He also made a few furnaces and burned charcoal to make torches. Reality wasn't like MC, where you could find or anywhere. He had to settle for charcoal for now. After a lot of effort, with a ding, Levi leveled up. Nothing changed. If he found diamonds and obsidian later, he could synthesize an enchantment table. It was late at night, stars filled the sky, with a crescent moon. Beautiful. Thought it was time to head back. Bilbo was waiting for his midnight snack. Chapter 4 Departure. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. At night, Bilbo couldn't sleep. I'll tidy up this room so you can get some rest. You can sleep in here. I'll help, Levi offered. Following him, Bilbo didn't object. As they tidied, Levi finally asked the question that had been nagging him. What year is it, anyway? What year? It's nighttime, of course. Most folks are asleep now. Bilbo replied, lifting a small box out of the way. Levi took it and placed it outside the door. They both worked in silence for a moment. Levi shook his head. No, I mean, which year is it? Oh, it's 1340. May, actually. Point 1340, clang. Ouch, Levi smacked his head on the low doorway. His health bar flickered, but he didn't actually take any damage. The year 1340 of the Shire reckoning was 2940 of the Third Age. When did the dwarves start their journey to the Lonely Mountain? Late April, 1341, if you remembered correctly, so, it was about a year before the Lonely Mountain expedition. Gandalf was probably still on the road somewhere, and Thorin was still wandering around, looking for work. Dwarves, elves, humans, orcs, wargs, a dragon, a mountain of gold, the eye, Dol Guldur, war, the One Ring. The words flashed through Levi's mind. At the same time, a dark figure seemed to materialize in his vision. You okay, Levi? Faintly, Levi blinked, snapping out of his daze. Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Just bumped my head. Guess you're pretty tall for a human, huh? Bilbo teased. Of course. I'm 6'1". Levi puffed out his chest without thinking. Boom. The health bar jumped. He instantly hunched over again. Heh. Bilbo chuckled at Levi's pained expression. Levi rubbed his head and shook it. What could he even do in a year? The quiet days passed quickly. A few days later, after a late supper, Levi sat on a small chair in the garden, a piece of grass hanging from his mouth, staring at a particularly bright star in the night sky. If a normal person wound up in this world, they'd be totally lost. Even knowing the history of the Lord of the Rings wouldn't help much in a year. Just figuring out where you were and how to survive would be tough enough. But Levi was different. Crunch. Levi, it's late. Shouldn't you be in bed? Levi turned to see Bilbo opening the door. In a bit. I just want to look at the stars for a while. All right. Just lock the door when you come in. Bilbo went back inside. Levi yawned, glanced at his full health bar and overflowing hunger, and suddenly jumped up from the chair, spinning around to take in the cozy hobbit hole. Living like this actually wasn't half bad, of course, that was assuming nothing came along to screw it up. Early the next morning, at dawn, there was a rustling sound at the door. Bilbo, still half asleep, struggled out of bed and poked his head out of his room. Levi, seeing Levi fully dressed and standing in the doorway, Bilbo asked, going somewhere? Levi stopped and turned. The road calls. I'm leaving, Mr. Baggins. He bowed slightly. Thank you for your hospitality. I'll be sure to repay you when we meet again. Bilbo blinked, suddenly wide awake. Why not stay a few more days? There's still so much I wanted to show you. Levi smiled. Bilbo's words trailed off. He knew he couldn't change Levi's mind. All good things must come to an end. I'm sure we'll see each other again soon, Mr. Baggins. Levi said meaningfully. I'm off on my adventure. Was it risky? Something stirred in Bilbo's heart, but it quickly faded away, and he just shook his head. Then wait a moment, Levi. Bilbo hurried back into the house, rummaged through a storage shelf, grabbed a bundle, and handed it to Levi. Take this with you. What's this? Some food. You'll need it. Travelers always need rations, right? Levi paused. He took the bundle, knelt down, patted Bilbo on the shoulder, and said sincerely, thank you, my friend. They'd only known each other a few days, but they'd gotten along great. Levi's amazing cooking and endless stories had formed a real connection between them. Levi, you have to come back. The hobbit, who had never left the Shire, seemed genuinely sad to see him go. Levi smiled and nodded. "I will." Parting seemed to be a common thing in this land, without much sentimentality, just a simple wave of the hand. They went their separate ways. Before leaving, Levi shamelessly asked Bilbo for a map, even though Levi knew the geography of Middle-earth from the story. He'd never actually been there. It was safer to have a map, the Shire. Where it all began, to the north were the ruins of the Kingdom of Arnor and the Almar Plateau, to the west were Lindon and the Blue Mountains, to the east, beyond the Brandywine Bridge, lay Bree, and further on, the Lone Lands, haunted by rangers keeping watch on the evils of the east. South of the road between the Brandywine Bridge and Bree were two dangerous areas, the Old Forest and the Barrow Downs. Both were uninhabited and rumored to be full of evil, so best avoided anyone who'd played Minecraft knew you had to have a base before you could start building anything. Otherwise, you just get griefed everywhere you went. Only with a place to call home could a person truly relax. Levi's eyes settled on a particular area, a large, open space east of Bree, the Lone Lands, vast, sparsely populated, and perfect for building a home. Of course, there were other places that fit the bill. But the main reason he chose this spot was that the Lonely Mountain Expedition and the Ring-Bearer would be passing through this area in the future. Levi had to be part of that action. Having a base nearby would make things a lot easier. Time to get moving. He stowed the map, got his bearings, and set off eastward. From dawn till dusk, Levi ran, pushing himself hard. He'd recently discovered that as long as he had enough food, his stamina was unlimited. The catch was that he burned through food like crazy. Bilbo had packed enough for a normal hobbit for a week, but Levi had already eaten half of it in a single day. But the efficiency was hard to argue with. In one day, Levi had crossed several Shire towns, passed over the Brandywine Bridge, and reached the edge of the Old Forest and the Barrow Downs. He was a one-man marathon, able to run as long as there was food in his belly. Night had fallen, but the sky wasn't dark. Guided by the starlight, Levi found a dead tree beside the road and took out his stone axe. Dong, 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 dong. Soon, the tree trunk cracked, and the dead tree crashed to the ground. Thump. The sound echoed through the silent wilderness. Levi ignored it and continued to chop the trunk into smaller pieces of firewood. A few minutes later, a bonfire blazed. Levi pulled a large bag of food from Bilbo's pack. The bag itself only took up one inventory slot, but if he took the food out, that would take up more slots. Levi figured that to fit in one slot, things had to be either identical and stackable or considered a single whole unit. He tossed the thought aside, skewered a few sausages on sticks, and started roasting them over the fire, idly pondering different crafting recipes, shields, armor, the things that would actually protect him and boost his combat effectiveness. He had nothing. He lacked the most important ingredient, iron. Seeing that the fire was dying down, Levi reached into his inventory and tossed in a few more sticks. If someone happened to wander by, they'd probably think he was some kind of wizard. With nothing else to do, Levi pulled out his stone sword to examine it. A description appeared. Stone sword, attack power +5. This weapon appears to have been carefully crafted. The surface is smooth as jade, the edges are razor sharp, and the blade is surprisingly strong, almost as durable as metal. A true work of art. Levi studied it again, marveling at the craftsmanship. It was so well made, he could probably sell it as a collectible. Creak, the wood behind him popped, and Levi remembered he was still roasting sausages. But when he turned around, he saw that the fire had dimmed. Was that stick burning that fast? Confused, but not about to let the fire go out, Levi tossed a few more sticks into the flames. They seemed to hit something. Thud. Levi's heart jumped. He looked up. He saw a mummified head with glowing red eyes peering down at him from the darkness, a layer of dry, gray skin clinging to its skull. Chapter 5 Corpse Demon Killer. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The firelight barely illuminated the tall, gaunt shadow. The instant he looked up, a chill shot from his toes to the top of his head, and Levi's scalp prickled. Before he could react, the grotesque, mummy-like figure shrieked and lunged at him. The piercing scream, so close, almost froze his blood. Levi dug deep and found the courage to move, rolling to the side. He looked back to see the workbench behind him completely smashed. That thing's got some serious power. The dim firelight finally revealed his unwelcome guest. Ragged clothes, a tall, skeletal body, gleaming eyes, and ancient jewelry clinking on its frame. Considering their location, a chilling word popped into Levi's head: corpse demon. Seriously? I went out of my way to avoid old tombs and creepy forests. How did I still run into one of these? Stay back. He swallowed hard, his breathing ragged. He. The tall shadow wheezed, its laughter like air escaping a broken bellows. It smelled something delicious. Fear. A web of fear pinned Levi to the spot, paralyzing him. The corpse demon seemed amused, realizing he was nothing more than a plaything to the creature. Levi instinctively gripped the stone sword in his hand, feeling humiliated. No way I'm going down like this. I'm taking this thing down with me. Swish. A rusted burial sword, edged with some ancient enchantment, was raised high, ready to strike. Arg! Levi roared, scrambling to his feet, swinging his sword in a desperate arc. Clang! The sound of metal striking stone echoed. Levi's wrist went numb, as if he'd struck solid iron. If that had been any old rock sword, it would have shattered. The attack had landed. -3. A damage marker floated in Levi's vision. Caught off guard, the corpse demon stumbled back, staring at Levi, then at the nick in its armor. It couldn't believe that a mere stone sword had actually pierced its witchcraft-infused protection and rusty armor. What was that sword made of? Hiss! A piercing shriek confirmed he'd angered the beast. He stood his ground, eyes locked on the corpse demon. A health bar appeared above its head, 57 of 60 health points. 3 times his own. And armor on top of that. Since he hadn't seen any other humans around, Levi could only use himself and the hobbits he'd seen as a baseline. He had 20 health points, while the average adult hobbit hovered around 15 to 18, rarely exceeding that. How did the old kingdom of Arno ever deal with these things? +1. A small, green tag floated by the corpse demon, 58 of 60. It wasn't. No time to think. Crash! The ancient sword met the stone sword with a thunderous boom, and a shock ran up Levi's arm. What incredible strength! And its health was regenerating. Ha! Levi strained, barely managing to block the blow. My system-crafted stone sword isn't anything to mess with. Swish! Another strike, and another small gash appeared. 54 out of 60. Good. Slow and steady wins the race. It may be a tank, but if I can keep hitting it. Whoosh. A gust of wind brushed his ear, and before he could react, the corpse demon's other hand slammed into his waist, sending him flying. For a moment, Levi lost consciousness, his vision blacking out. He blinked and found himself sprawled on the ground. -7. 13/20. Excruciating pain shot through his waist. 14/20. The burial rings on the corpse's hands had served as a nasty set of brass knuckles. The contact of metal on skin was painfully clear. 16/20. May 17, 20. But within seconds, the wound started to heal as his saturation decreased. Seeing the attack coming again, Levi scrambled to his feet and barely managed to deflect another strike. 20/20. In that brief moment, his health had maxed out, and the pain in his waist vanished as if it had all been a bad dream. The price was half of his stored hunger being drained. Levi took a deep breath. In essence, he had a 60-point health pool. If he factored in the food reserves in his inventory, he'd have even more. With that much health, he had nothing to fear. Bring it on. To be honest, both men's swordsmanship was pathetic. Li Wei knew no techniques at all, and the corpse demon's skills were limited by its twisted limbs. The fight was basically a straight-up slugfest. Thwack, straining to parry the ancient sword, Levi swung with all his might again. -3, -3, and occasionally -4, -5 popped out above the corpse demon. Under the constant attacks, the demon was pushed back a step, but this moment of unexpected bravery could only go so far. The corpse demon, having seen it all before, reacted quickly. Swish. The corpse demon realized he needed to guard himself and swung. Panicked, Levi only had time to twist to the side, avoiding a fatal blow, but receiving a large gash. -6, however, a mere 6 points of damage could be fully recovered. Just as he thought this, his heart suddenly fluttered. -1, Levi looked at his status bar, the red heart representing health value suddenly cracked and its color gradually darkened. -1, withering? No, this is, curse, twos, corpses, also known as evil spirits, are servants of darkness, and their existence represents some kind of evil. He was really in trouble. It was going to be difficult to fight without armor against a monster that crushes you in all attributes and also has a continuous damage buff. How did you deal with this kind of monster when you played games before? Move, block the terrain, and use operations and characteristics to defeat the value, characteristics, *thump, another attack, and Levi threw himself to the ground, narrowly dodging the sword, and throwing a handful of dirt, eat dirt. Levi's character wasn't so bad when it came to using keyboard operations in the game, but this was reality. Suppressing the fear was enough of a feat, then he could only rely on characteristics. Levi stood up, stumbling and rolling on the ground for several seconds, his blood volume completely restored. A row of pre-stored hunger points was completely consumed. Ugly thing, look at me, that the taunt worked. The corpse demon's eyes lit up, and it charged forward. Levi endured the pain and suddenly raised his hand, *snap, a rough stone with a length, width and height of exactly 1 meter suddenly appeared in mid-air, blocking the middle, causing the zombie to stumble. Naturally, Levi would not miss this opportunity. He slashed again and again, -3, 27 of 60. Roar, as if aware that its power was constantly draining and that it might really fade, the corpse demon ignited and tried its best to cross the stone and move forward. However, Li Wei just stepped back, took out a stone and put it down, blocking the corpse demon's movement again. The corpse demon was furious. Normally it could pass through a stone with ease, but this one was different. Boom. A figure fell from the sky and struck the zombie demon on the head with an axe. This axe jump attack directly cut off 10 points of health. With the enemy stunned, Li Wei immediately brought out his stone sword, -4. At this moment, the corpse demon finally recovered and pulled out the ancient sword, *swish*. A sword pierced Levi's chest, but Levi ignored it, grabbing the ancient sword and sticking it in his chest. Then, time to die with this knife, boom, *. When the last sword fell, sharp screams spread throughout the wilderness, and a black energy rose from the corpse demon, exploding and dissipating in mid-air. The mummy lost power and fell to the ground. Achievement obtained, Monster Hunter. Conditions met, kill hostile creatures. Achieve special achievement, Zombie Killer. Conditions met, kill a corpse demon. Title system activated, unlock title, Corpse Killer. Chapter 6, Leaping Horse Inn. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. After taking a breath, Levi grabbed the sausage from beside the campfire. The heat was perfect. A few bites later, his health bar was maxed out, his broken bones snapped back together, defying science, wounds healed fast, and his pale skin flushed with color. 20/20. Levi felt the tension melt away. Only then did he notice the newly unlocked title system. Right now, just one title sat there, Corpse Demon Killer. Levi looked higher and saw a Where option. Equipping this title means certain beings and those with sharp instincts can immediately sense your deeds through observation, and your reputation will spread faster. Irrefutable proof. So, just a title, no real perks. Okay, whatever. Without dwelling on it, Levi equipped the title and turned to the corpse demon's remains. Now that the evil spirits were gone, it was just a twisted-looking mummy, definitely an elite monster, so it had to drop something, right? Time for some looting. Jackpot. He flipped the mummy over. In the moonlight, he saw plenty of shiny stuff. This corpse must have been someone rich in life, decked out in burial jewelry. Evil's gone, rest in peace, Levi muttered. Without a second thought, he collected the jewelry and stuffed it into his backpack. His first score in Middle-earth. This jewelry looked to be in good shape and should fetch a pretty penny. Bag it now, then give it some sun later to get rid of any curses. That's what the original book said, so it ought to work. With the jewelry stashed away, Levi eyed the ancient sword lying nearby. Picking it up, a line of text popped up. Old Tomb Sword Attack +4, that was it. Seriously? That's all, that this was elite monster gear. How could it have the same attack power as a wooden sword? The zombie was hitting way harder than 4 points, and there was that withering effect. Just a total letdown, huh? Levi figured the corpse demon must have some kind of curse power, disappointed, but hey, it was a real metal sword, so Levi tossed it in his backpack, plenty of room, might as well keep it as a souvenir. All in all, not a bad haul. After packing everything, Levi quickly put out the fire and headed down the road under the moonlight. Corpses littered the roadside. This wasn't a place to linger, come to think of it. Maybe he made too much noise chopping down trees, or maybe the fire was too obvious and attracted a corpse demon from who knows where. Whoosh, strong figures sprinted along the road. Days turned into nights. Finally, as dawn approached, Levi stopped, scrambled up a small hill, and peered into the distance. A small town shimmered on the horizon. Even though he'd never been there, the name instantly came to him, Bree. Finally. Levi felt a surge of excitement. Finally, other humans. But first, Levi hopped off the hill, pulled out the jewelry, and laid it in the sun. After a few moments, wisps of black smoke rose from it. The gray jewelry sparkled again. The curse was lifted. Sure that everything was safe, Levi packed up and left. Like they say, looks can be deceiving. It wasn't until lunchtime that Levi reached a gate and was stopped for questioning by a guard. This was the first time Levi had seen humans in this world. Who are you? Just an adventurer. Adventurer. Through the small window, a face gave Levi a suspicious look, especially at his clothes. Weird outfit, but we don't turn away adventurers here. The window slammed shut, and the guard disappeared. Levi was about to say something when the door swung open. Come on in, Master Adventurer. Levi nodded. He glanced at the guard's stats, 20 HP, just like him, pure human. Hey, you know where the Prancing Pony Inn is? I heard it's a good place. Straight ahead, the guard said. Thanks. It wasn't long, at least, not compared to the distance Levi had covered, before a building with a big sign came into view. A prancing horse was carved into the wooden sign, with the words Prancing Pony below. The Prancing Pony Inn had been run by the Butterfly family for generations. Business always seemed to be booming. Even early in the morning, a crowd had already gathered. Ignoring the stares, Levi headed straight for the bar. Hey there, what can I get for you? I need a room and some food. He glanced down at his clothes. He definitely looked out of place. And if possible, could you find me a new set of clothes? The bartender hesitated, unsure if he could. Errands weren't really part of the inn service, but looking at this oddly dressed stranger, he figured he might be something special. After a beat, the bartender said, yeah, but it'll depend on how much you're willing to pay. This isn't really part of the job. Clink, an old coin landed on the bar, drawing everyone's attention. Is that enough? The bartender picked up the coin and examined it closely, his eyes wide. Sorry, sir, I can't tell you its value. Wait here, I'll grab the boss. A middle-aged man hurried over. He glanced at Levi, then at the coin. He couldn't take his eyes off it. Beautiful, just beautiful, the boss murmured. It's just a silver coin, but it looks ancient, and the craftsmanship, lost to time. You sure you want to give it up? The coin itself wasn't that valuable, but its history, year, and significance were, and some people would pay a fortune for it. Yep. Alright then. The boss said, the best room, the best food and drink, and the best clothes. I promise you, everything will be top-notch. Take a rest, I'll get everything ready. After getting Levi's measurements and style preferences, the boss left. Soon, the bartender brought over a mountain of barbecue, stew, the works, plus some fresh fruit and a mug of Prancing Pony's special brew, practically overflowing with foam. One sip revealed a distinct wheat flavor. After chowing down, Levi's fullness meter shot up to 2 bars. Chugging the beer gave him a drunken buff for a few seconds, making him a bit dizzy. With the fading buff, Levi went to his room, locked the door, and collapsed on the soft bed. His body wouldn't get tired as long as he had food, and his mind was still sharp, but out of habit, and with nothing better to do, Levi decided to rest. Lying down beat standing any day. A soft knock came quickly. Levi jumped up. Who is it? It's the bartender, sir. I've brought your clothes. Click, Levi took the clothes. Try them on, sir. If they don't fit, I can get you something else. Then he left. Levi closed the door. He tried on the new outfit, yup, except for his slightly soft features and black hair, he could pass for a local, blending in like a charm. Chapter 7 Recycling. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. In a world where war's the name of the game, you can't go traipsing around without decent gear. Blacksmith shop, a burly dude was hammering away, shaping a piece of iron. Levi stopped to watch for a while. When the clang of the hammer stopped and the blacksmith took a breather, he walked in and said, "Hey there." "Hey. What can I do for you, friend? You sell weapons and armor, right?" The blacksmith looked him up and down. "Who are you?" "An adventurer." "So you ain't from around here?" Levi nodded. "Then beat it." The blacksmith shook his head. "Hold on a sec," Levi said quickly. "I'll pay you good money." "Name your price." The blacksmith sighed. "It ain't about the money. Bree's weapons and armor are for Bree folks only, and not just any Bree folk, at that. If you're really looking for something to defend yourself, I suggest you try the farm next door. Maybe they'll sell you a hoe." Levi was taken aback, then it clicked, right, this isn't a video game where you can buy a full set of armor at the corner store. In this day and age, weapons and armor are considered strategic resources. You can't just sell them willy-nilly, especially not to some random adventurer of unknown origin. "Okay, how about selling me some iron?" "Just a little bit. I need it for research." The blacksmith hesitated. "How much are you talking?" Levi gestured to indicate the size. "Nope." The blacksmith shook his head. Levi's face fell. If he had metal ore, he could synthesize equipment himself, but mines aren't exactly everywhere. "Hey, buddy, did I hear right? You're looking to buy some stuff?" Levi and the blacksmith turned to see a guy with a beard and messy hair grinning at Levi. Looks like this dude was eavesdropping for a while. "Who are you?" "Get outta here, you bum." Scram. Before Levi could finish his question, the blacksmith slammed his hammer down on the bench and started yelling at the newcomer to leave. The guy just smiled, unfazed. All right, my friend. I just happened to be passing by and overheard that you couldn't help this gentleman out, but I might be able to." "Don't give me that smooth talk," the blacksmith interrupted. "You better be on the level and not break any laws around here." Of course. Always follow the local rules." The man said, all smiles. "You have 3 seconds to get out of my sight." The blacksmith wasn't messing around. 3. 2. The blacksmith picked up his hammer and stood up. Okay, I'm going. No need to get all worked up." The man quickly backed away, glancing at Levi a few times. Levi looked at the man, then at the blacksmith, and decided to leave with the stranger. The blacksmith watched him go, and called out, "I'd be careful, Mr. Adventurer." Levi just nodded in acknowledgement. Once they were out of earshot, Levi asked, "What's your name?" "I'm Chandler William, sir." "Just call me William." "A retailer?" "That's a new one." "What do you do?" William shrugged. "Oh, the local merchants call us pesky traveling peddlers, undercutting their business. We sell everything, buy everything, and are everywhere." Before Levi could think about it, William continued, "I won't deny I collect junk, but I can't guarantee you'll find what you're looking for in it." "You know what I'm looking for?" "Of course. Weapons and armor to keep you safe, right?" Levi nodded. "Come with me, sir." William, looking confident, led Levi away. Levi was a little skeptical, but the guy seemed sure of himself, so he decided to follow him. Bree isn't that big of a town, and it's a mixed bag. Maybe this guy really does have what he needs. After a bit of walking, William led Levi to a rundown part of town. Unlike the main streets, this block had a neglected feel. Cobwebs and vines covered the walls and eaves, like no one ever cleaned around there. The houses seemed to be occupied. Creek, A door opened slightly, and a burly guy with a stubbly beard stepped out. He glanced at William, then fixed his gaze on Levi, following him with his eyes until he was down the street before turning back. The door closed. "This is where you get weapons and armor?" Levi frowned and stared at William. You think I'm an easy mark? You think I'm stupid? Levi pointed to a pile of rusty swords and armor in the yard. You're showing me this? Traveling merchants, they aren't local residents. I don't know if they will lose reputation if they are cheated. Feeling a chill down his spine, William hurriedly explained, Listen, adventurer, I'm a law-abiding businessman. In Bree, and in every kingdom, weapons and armor are controlled items. Anyone who sells them privately is in serious trouble. It took me a lot of work to get my hands on this stuff, and I can promise you that I'm the only one in this area who has a pipeline to get it. You can't buy this anywhere else. William pulled out a rotten longsword and waved it in front of Levi. Look, even though this sword has a few imperfections, it can still be used for self-defense. And anyone cut by this sword? They won't last long. Imperfections. Levi took the rotten longsword. As soon as he touched it, its stats appeared: decayed longsword, attack +1. Levi tried to swing it, and a chunk of rust fell off. He instantly understood the quality of this sword. If he actually tried to chop someone with it, it'd probably break first. A stick picked up off the road would be more useful. Levi glanced around the yard and figured that everything here was probably the same level of quality. No wonder Bree didn't bother doing anything about it. Was it even worth bothering with? TSK. Levi scoffed and went to toss the broken sword aside, but then, a system prompt suddenly popped up and stopped him. New synthesis item unlocked. Anti-metallurgy, new. Description, higher utilization rate. Invest, decayed longsword, estimated output, 50% to 80% raw materials. The broken hunk of metal in his hand suddenly smelled a whole lot better. Chapter 8, Get Ready for Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Happiness can't be captured in a single color. This junk of yours is worth more than any stick I could pick up off the road. Levi looked at the pile of rags on the ground, a puzzled expression on his face. William, caught off guard, just grabbed a sword and swung it around a bit. Oh, so you do think it's somewhat useful, huh? Levi was a little surprised. Not by William's nerve, but by the surprisingly decent swordplay. Not half bad. You're gonna need it. You that sure? Dealer's intuition, sir. William grinned, trying to be agreeable. Interesting. Some people in this world really are special, like a wizard. The 5 wizards aren't the only ones with magic powers. There are a few others scattered around. William's eyes bugged out when a small, intricately crafted piece of jewelry appeared out of thin air in Levi's hand. Smallest piece I could find. I'm a bit short on cash. How about this? William squinted, giving the piece a closer look. Seemed like it had a story. You want to sell this to me, sir? It's worth more than all this equipment, easy. William carefully took the jewelry, his pupils dilating. This wasn't just any old trinket. It was an antique, the kind that's damn near impossible to find. Some big shot would pay a fortune for a rare piece like this. Not bad. Even though it was small, he'd still make a killing. Wait a minute. William stared at the gadget in his hand. This style, if he wasn't mistaken. He shot his head up, looking at Levi. This guy was different than he thought. He killed those things. He stole this from them. The corpse demon, one of the elite ones, no less. Holy crap, regular people can't even touch those things, and this guy didn't look cursed or poisoned, meaning he probably handled that corpse demon without much trouble. William's face went stiff. He realized he was in over his head. Levi, oblivious to William's internal monologue, was just watching his reaction. He figured the trinket must be worth a good amount, enough to cover the whole pile of equipment. Pack it up for me. Packing it all together would just count as one item, saving some space. William, suddenly a little dazed, nodded rapidly, grabbed some rope, and started bundling up the rags. After a good while, Levi looked at the row of rag bundles now in his backpack and nodded, satisfied. William wasn't curious where all the rags went. Someone who could take down a magic creature like a zombie probably had some tricks up his sleeve. With everything he needed, Levi turned to leave, but William stopped him. Wait, sir. William stepped forward and pulled out a long, cloth-wrapped object from his waist. "This is for you." Levi took it, unwrapped the cloth, and his eyes lit up. Iron dagger, attack +3, attack speed +50%. Special trait, sharp, attack power +1. Unlocked synthesis recipe, dagger, type. How much? That if something was good, Levi was happy to buy it. No charge. Huh, William said seriously, think of it as a gesture of friendship. You want to be friends? Levi asked, amused. Yeah. Levi didn't answer directly. This is a nice dagger. I'll take it. His friendship wasn't that cheap, at most, he'd lend him a hand if he got into trouble, just for unlocking the recipe. William wasn't bothered, just smiled. A junk dealer might not have much money, but he had a good eye. Even if he couldn't be friends with someone like this, knowing him was still a good thing. He didn't stick around in Bree long. After returning to the inn and stocking up on food, Levi continued eastward. Dressed in simple clothes and without any obvious weapons, Levi walked out of the east gate. As soon as he walked out the front, a group of burly, scruffy men gathered in the alley near the back. They exchanged glances, knowing exactly what was about to happen. Easy target, snap, a hand landed on one of their shoulders. The big guy didn't flinch, looking back at the figure in the shadows. William? What, you want a piece of this too? Nah. Just wanted to let you know, you're better off leaving him alone. He's not your average Joe. The men considered it. Bold crooks who'd made it this far knew how to survive. They went home. Junk dealers had never been the popular type. That didn't make them soft. After leaving Bree, Levi found a secluded spot. He pulled out a workbench and a furnace, patiently burned the trash, collected 9 iron particles, and crafted an iron ingot. Then, he synthesized a reverse smelting furnace. He threw in charcoal and more trash, and the burning continued. When the first piece of ragged armor yielded 3 iron ingots, Levi knew he wouldn't be short on iron anytime soon. He made 3 more reverse smelting furnaces. Half the day passed until all the bundles of tatters in the backpack were burned. Levi looked at the 13 iron blocks in his backpack. Satisfied, he immediately made a set of iron armor, a set of iron tools, and a wooden shield. Then, he looked at the newly unlocked dagger recipe. A wooden stick plus an iron ingot could synthesize an iron dagger. The new dagger still had 3 attack points and an attack speed of +50%, but it lacked the sharpness attribute. That was fine. He'd have a chance to make an enchantment table later and add some sharpness. He wondered if enchantments and special attributes could stack. If they could, he needed to carefully research the attributes. Putting on the iron suit, Levi felt a slight increase in weight, but it didn't affect his actions or speed. He got the achievement. Ready to go. The iron suit looked sleek, white, and silver. Unlike the blocky appearance in the game, the iron armor was beautiful and seemed to offer much better protection. The iron sword was the same model as the stone and wooden swords, appearing slender, solid, and sharp. He held a large wooden shield in his left hand. He was secure. He didn't need to wear the armor all the time, of course. It might scare people. When he didn't need it, it went into the backpack. Putting it on was instantaneous anyway, so he didn't have to worry about being late. With all the preparations complete, Levi cleaned up the area and continued his journey. The next day, leaving the Forgotten Inn, the last outpost on the edge of the wilderness, Levi walked a short distance to the edge of Bree, looked around, and felt a sense of change. From here on out, it was wilderness. He probably wouldn't see another soul for a long time, except for some bad guys. Come on out. Levi shouted. Silence. Levi was annoyed. He was too obvious. As early as when he'd gone to Williams, he'd sensed someone watching him. He'd thought it was just some local thugs curious about an outsider, so he hadn't paid much attention. But all the way to the Forgotten Inn, the feeling of being watched hadn't gone away. Following him this long, it wasn't just curiosity. He should have known to keep his wealth hidden. They hadn't made a move yet because they were still in the Bree area, a human settlement. Levi couldn't do anything either. Now, outside the border, there were no rules. Now was the time. Swish, the bushes rustled. Chapter 9 Orc Slayer. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Master, if I were you, I'd just hand over all the cash you got. Save yourself a headache later. He barely got the words out when, *SHHK*, the sound of 3 or 4 daggers being drawn sliced through the air. A bunch of rough-looking guys, faces covered, stepped out from the side of the road. Their eyes were locked on Li Wei, making sure he didn't bolt. Each has 20 health points, no armor, star. That was the first intel Li Wei picked up. Think you got me cornered? What do you think? 5 more thugs emerged from behind a roadside tree, 8 total, ***. Could there really be this many lowlifes in one town? Nah, these weren't just your run-of-the-mill small-town punks, bandits, that was more like it. Someone threw the first punch. Come on, try it. The bandit's eyes went wide as a longsword seemed to materialize in Li Wei's hand. A few of them actually flinched back. What are you scared of, you morons? The apparent leader barked. He's just some magic act. Ain't like we haven't killed those before. Boss, clang, starred out a ringing sound as the bandit leader expertly blocked the longsword with his dagger. 3 others immediately charged, aiming to stab Li Wei in his gut. A blow like that would definitely kill, but the next thing they knew, a set of silver armor flashed into existence on Li Wei, stopping their strikes cold. What the? The bandits were stunned. Pulling out a weapon like a magic trick was one thing. But conjuring up a whole set of armor right before a fight? A couple of them were already thinking about running. This was a bust. What are you waiting for? Get him, the second-in-command yelled from the back, even as he took a couple of subtle steps backward himself. That shout seemed to work, though. A few of the less bright thugs charged forward. SHHK, seeing that their flimsy daggers weren't doing much damage, and with no need to be careful, Li Wei went on the offensive, ignoring the others as he swung his sword at the leader, who was trying to make a break for it. One thrust to the chest, and Li Wei was stepping on the corpse. Yanking his sword free, he spun around, slashing left and right. He ignored the daggers aimed at him from behind, throwing out attacks like a man possessed. He was like an invulnerable war god. It didn't matter what the bandits threw at him. Whoever he targeted was going down. Any average bandit probably had better combat skills than him, but even so, Levi could still beat a few people. A battle this intense didn't require skill, it was just a straight-up bloodbath. Honestly, 8 bandits combined were less dangerous than a single corpse monster. Of course, that was with Levi wearing his armor. Finally, after another bandit fell, the guy next to him watched his desperate stabs fail to even scratch the armor. His mind snapped. Witchcraft. He's a wizard. Can't kill him. Run. He threw down his weapon and bolted into the woods, leaving his buddies behind. The rest suddenly woke up too and scrambled away. Li Wei gave chase, swinging his sword, leaving a few more bandits bleeding on the ground. When he looked up, only the backs of 2 fleeing bandits were still visible. He could probably catch them if he really tried. They'd definitely collapse from exhaustion first, but it wasn't worth the time. The fight was over. He looted the corpses, dug a hole, and buried them on the spot. Then, he smelted down the seized weapons into raw materials before continuing on his way. Maybe it was the lingering smell of blood, or maybe this stretch of road was genuinely deserted, but for several days, Li Wei didn't see a soul. No robbers, no bandits, but the signs on the roadside told him this area, though desolate, was far from peaceful. They trudged slowly for another 3 days. In the fading light of dusk, Levi spotted the silhouette of ruins in the distance. As he got closer, memories stirred, and he finally spoke the name. Wind and Cloud Top. The images in his mind matched the reality before him. Levi felt a surge of excitement. He'd finally found something different on this boring trip. He scrambled up the broken stones, climbing to the top, looking around with the curiosity of a tourist. After a while, Li Wei couldn't help but sigh. Even in ruins, the place still hinted at its former grandeur. Reaching a few partially intact corners, Levi pulled out a torch and examined the broken stones closely. Lost in his fascination, Li Wei tripped, realizing how quickly darkness had fallen. Something was wrong. Li Wei quickly extinguished the torch, plunging the area into darkness. High on a peak amidst a vast, black field, the flickering light vanished. Li Wei was sweating, a knot forming in his stomach. He'd been living in peace too long, lost his common sense, and made a stupid mistake. Fortunately, the darkness didn't last long. It was just a brief moment, so hopefully, nothing creepy would come crawling out, right? Whoosh! A gust of wind brushed his face. Instinctively, Levi turned his head and saw something fall to the ground behind the broken wall, an arrow jutting from its head, the rough, snarling face. It was unmistakably a half-orc. A wave of cold sweat washed over him. Even with his armor, Levi felt a shiver of fear. If that arrow had been aimed at him, it would have been a headshot, that would have cost him a good chunk of health. Thankfully, its target had been the hidden orc. This was also the first time Levi had seen one. Levi barely had time to react. From the moment the first orc fell, something in the darkness seemed to churn. A horde of ugly monsters charged out from the shadows, screaming savagely. "Ha ha ha, dinner's on us tonight. Human meat. Fresh human meat. Chop him up. Use his armor for a pot. I'll drink wine from his skull." That even Levi was taken aback by the spectacle. A quick count revealed about a dozen orcs. They might not have sounded like a lot, but they looked like an army, forming a circle around him. An average person would probably be paralyzed by fear at the sight of these hideous creatures, but Levi had faced corpses and bandits. He was no longer a clueless newbie on the battlefield. As the shouts faded, he focused and saw these orcs only had around 16 or 17 health points on average, and their equipment was piecemeal and shoddy. They were clearly just wandering orcs. An ordinary person could take on two of them with a little courage. Seeing the situation clearly, Levi felt no fear. He charged forward, swinging his sword, felling two orcs with a single blow. The blood-crazed orcs weren't about to stand back. They might have been cowardly, prone to infighting, but they were definitely up for a gang beatdown. While Levi was busy with their buddies, two of them took the chance to stab him in the side. Levi didn't bother to defend. The next second, two arrows whizzed through the air, and the would-be attackers fell to the ground, shafts sticking out of their foreheads. "Sneaky rat, show yourself." An orc, who seemed to be a low-level boss, roared, impotent with rage, in the direction the arrow had come from. The next second, he was hit by an arrow from another direction and dropped dead. Meanwhile, Levi was finishing his work. A dozen orcs with low health and flimsy armor were easy pickings once he found his rhythm. A few strikes, and they were all down. His hunger bar barely even dropped. Plus, someone was secretly helping him. Achievement/title, Orc Slayer. Congratulations on unlocking the title. Shaking the blood from his sword and putting away his backpack to show he meant no harm, Levi looked in the direction the arrows had come from. It was pitch black there. Chapter 10 Development. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Hey, who's there?" Levi called out. A voice answered, "Just a homeless guy." "Homeless?" A figure slowly materialized from the darkness, voice only, no footsteps. If the guy hadn't shown himself, Levi would never have known anyone was lurking nearby. Levi fought the urge to grab his torch, squinting in the moonlight. The figure was tall, cloaked, with a dagger at his waist and a simple wooden bow slung across his back. His face was hidden, buried in shadows beneath a hood. "Thanks," Levi said. Even though he could have taken down the orcs himself, the guy had helped, and he wasn't about to dismiss good intentions. While gathering his arrows and checking the orcs he'd killed, the homeless man said, "No problem. Those orcs are my usual prey. I've been tracking them for a while. You just help me out too." Then, looking at Levi, he added, "But a word of advice, try not to use lights up this high at night." Levi rubbed his hands, feeling a little foolish. Changing the subject, he asked, "You're one of the Dunedain, right?" That the homeless man glanced at Levi, surprised. "Yeah." They quickly finished looting the orc with the arrow in its head, but left the one Levi had hacked to pieces untouched. "I heard there were some homeless folks secretly watching over this wilderness." "Guess it's true." "People actually say that?" The homeless man chuckled. "That's a first. These remnants of the Northern Kingdom, wandering the wilderness, were often suspected because of their unpredictable movements and air of mystery. Some folks just wrote them off as thugs or bandits." "Did you take care of those things in the old tombs?" That the homeless man's head snapped up. A pair of bright gray eyes fixed on Levi from the darkness. "I did." "How could you tell?" Levi asked, curious. "Intuition. I tangled with those creeps for a while. Well, some intuition, Levi thought. He reluctantly accepted the explanation. After a moment, he pulled out the broken, rotting sword he'd looted from the corpse demon and tossed it to the homeless man. The man caught it and examined it carefully, looking surprised. You know this kind of sword? Levi asked. The wanderer nodded. It's familiar. We used these a long time ago. The forging method's been lost, but this one might still be usable with some work. Then it's yours, Levi said. Oh. Seriously? You know, this sword is old. It's an antique. The right buyer would pay a good price. Sure, but I'd rather give it to someone who needs it than sell it to some collector. Besides, this thing means something to you, doesn't it? Okay, thanks. I really appreciate it. The homeless man nodded firmly, no longer hesitating. He rummaged in his pocket and pulled out a coin, handing it to Levi. Take this as a token. If you ever need anything, wait for me at the Forgotten Inn. I stay there sometimes. I'll be there within 2 weeks, max. Levi nodded and pocketed the coin. I'm Levi. What's your name? Faradin. The homeless man gave his name and they said their goodbyes. He melted back into the darkness. Levi surveyed the wilderness, new ideas forming. This place ain't so bad. 2 weeks later, Levi emerged from the network of underground tunnels, grinning. His backpack was stuffed with raw iron ore and a dozen or so rough stones that he couldn't remove from the fortress. Hard work paid off. After weeks of exploration and digging, Levi had finally discovered a vein of iron ore deep underground. He didn't know how extensive it was, but it was definitely enough to mine for a while, and not just iron. Digging around, he occasionally found other scattered minerals, copper, sulfur, saltpeter, etc. To be honest, Levi didn't recognize most of this stuff, but when he dug it out and tossed it in his backpack, the system helpfully labeled it. When he had sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal in his backpack, the crafting table suddenly unlocked a new formula. Gunpowder, and TNT. After that, Levi made sure to gather those materials whenever he was digging. Having confirmed that the area was mineral-rich, Levi made a decision. This is it. His first base. Levi opened his map and marked a spot. The location was roughly between Windy Peak and the Troll Forest, away from the main road. It was surrounded by trees, had a lake and water source, and a relatively broad, flat area. If it weren't for the orcs and wargs that roamed the area, it would be a great place to live. But Levi wasn't scared. A month later, a fortress of mixed stone and wood stood on the flat ground. It was surrounded by a 20-foot-high wall, enclosing a large area. Water flowed from the castle, nourishing a field of wheat that sprang up overnight, turning golden in days. From a distance, it was beautiful, but a little too quiet, uninhabited looking. However, the occasional fireworks launched from the city walls told those eyes hidden in the darkness that someone did live there. One day, Levi was hauling a pickaxe and a backpack of ore and cobblestones back home. He approached the gate when he suddenly tensed, spotting a man sitting on the wall, watching him. Levi didn't know how the man had gotten up there. A vagrant. The guy looked familiar. Faradin? Levi asked. The vagrant on the wall waved a hand, as if to say, yep. Seeing Levi's return, he stood and jumped down from the height easily. Levi was impressed by his agility. How did you find this place? Levi asked. My buddies told me a wizard with strange powers had built a fortress out of nowhere, planted a field that grew crazy fast. They described you, and I knew it was you. Besides, your place is pretty obvious. Fireworks every day. Hard to miss. This time, Faradin didn't hide his face. In the sunlight, this tall Dunedain had black hair, gray eyes, and a handsome face. He looked 30 or 40 years old, but he could actually be hundreds. Fair enough, Levi said. He hadn't been trying to hide. Orcs and stuff could come if they wanted. He was a hardcore Minecraft player. What did he care if an army showed up? Did they think he was just for show? Come in and sit down. I just renovated the kitchen. You can try out my cooking. Faradin shook his head. Can't. I came to tell you a band of orc cavalry has their eyes on this place. Dozens of warg riders alone. Plus the other grunts, they're probably 100 strong. Asterisk yikes, *100 orcs, including dozens of warg riders, this little castle might not be enough to hold them off. Wargs could jump pretty high, easily scaling the roof, if it was just jumping high, no problem. But they could also climb, scaling trees over 30 feet tall, this 20-foot wall, considering how smooth the cobblestones were, they probably couldn't get a grip, right? They'll be here soon. You still have time to leave, Farad'n advised. Nah, I just built this base. I'm not running, Levi said, *, if some orcs can run me off, then I'm just working for them, *, worst case, I fight them, *, seeing Levi's determination, Farad'n looked at the castle. If you stay, stopping them will be tough. Their leader is a huge, strong orc. Farad'n glanced at the gate, made of wooden fences, *, could this thing really be called a gate, *? This won't hold him. It's fine. I got a plan, Levi said, brushing off Farad'n's concern. Farad'n looked Levi up and down, then at the castle that had appeared almost overnight. Okay, I'm guessing you have some tricks up your sleeve, Farad'n said. But are you sure you don't want more time to prepare? When I found them, they were heading this way. They'll be here tonight, if nothing slows them down. What? Tonight? That was soon, Levi's heart pounded, he might have sounded brave, but he was a rookie. His biggest battle was getting mugged by a group of bandits, suddenly being told he'd be fighting tonight. Yeah, he was sweating.